The study population here again was 491,367 participants over 15 years, ages 50 to 71. You can see all different ethnicities: Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Pacific Islander, American Indian, Alaska Native. And the fish intake was fried and non-fried, and it varied between 3.2 grams per day to 43 grams per day. So it's a pretty wide range. And so they had these different quintiles of people, quintiles 1 through quintile 5. These are different segments of people. Then what I also wanted to point out is they had quintiles by fried and non-fried. So this group was those quintiles separated by the fried group, people who did fried fish intake, and the non-fried fish intake. And what you notice, the correlation, by the way, if you see a p-value of 0.001, that means highly correlated with relative to reference. And you see here, the fried fish intake group is not correlated, okay? Here, the multivariate analysis, and here, both in malignant melanoma, here, and here. This is a reference, okay? 0.36, 0.06. But here, if you notice in the non-fried fish group, it's 0.03, 0.003, and 0.001. The lower that p-value number is, which means it's highly correlated. But the results of the study, CI, confidence interval 1, indicates strong correlation. So what that means is so all study groups Q1 to Q5 showed positive correlation between fish intake and cancer diagnosis, and correlation was observed for both sexes, all ages, and all ethnicities. Very high correlation, total fish intake in all these different groups. Again, in the malignant melanoma and melanoma in situ. So here's getting into a little bit of the details. So what they found was, this is what's fascinating, they found that if you looked at those group of people who had tuna, and so if you look at a can of Star-Kissed tuna, that's about a 5-ounce can of tuna. So they found out those people who took about 0.3 grams, which is 0.01 ounces, which is, by the way, a tenth of a tablespoon. And if you compared that to those people who had just a tablespoon, by the way, this is over that 15-year period. Just to be clear, we're looking over a longitudinal study. So over that 15.5-year period, I want to make sure I'm being clear, over that 15-year period, if someone had about 1 tablespoon of tuna, which is what that 14.2 grams, it's a half an ounce. If you think about a can of tuna is about 5 ounces, and if you take 1 tablespoon and you have a tablespoon spread out over 15 years, which roughly comes to around 14.2 grams, and if that's a median average amount you consume, then you're going to have an increase of 20% higher risk of malignant melanoma and 17% higher risk of stage 0, which is melanoma in situ, which means it hasn't spread. So there's melanoma, it hasn't spread. A malignant melanoma, it's spread, okay? So again, just to give you those numbers, this is tuna. So think about someone, I don't know how much is, let's say you have a tuna fish sandwich and you use a whole can, and that would be sort of 10 of those units. And let's say you had 1 can every 10 days for 15 years, you have a 20% higher risk of getting malignant melanoma and 17% higher risk of stage 0 melanoma. So that's the first takeaway. The second thing that was interesting was, again, this is again a correlation, was when they compared the 0.3 group, which is about a tenth of a tablespoon, and they compared that to people who did 17.8 grams, which is a little more than a tablespoon of non-fried fish per day. This is non-fried fish. So this could be sushi. This could be canned mackerel. Okay. This is any fish, any kind of fish. If you were having about a little more than a tablespoon a day, in this case over 15 years, 18% higher risk of melanoma, pretty much close to that taily tuna, but a 25 higher risk of stage 0 melanoma. What's fascinating is the researchers did not identify significant associations between consumption of fried fish and risk of malignant melanoma or stage 0. So isn't that fascinating? This gets down to the causation piece. So people were assuming non-fried fish or tuna had a 17 to upwards of 25% risk of the melanoma, which wasn't spreading, and melanoma, which was spreading. But if you fried the stuff, there was really no risk. Now, what's interesting is, I was mentioning this to a friend of mine in the southern part of India, in a place called Kerala. You know, they make amazing fried fish, but they really fry it in coconut oil. Very, very tasty. And it made me start thinking about traditional cultures in India, for example. They don't eat raw fish. You typically cook the fish really well, but you do fry it a lot. Does frying do something even though there may be mercury? And we'll talk about that. So again, this is where processes matter. The analysis we're doing is to really understand this research that was just completed. I think yesterday it was published, looking at fish consumption and skin melanoma. They said there's a correlation, but we're sort of discussing the research, but we're also unraveling correlation versus causation. Someone just said, I had fish and chips tonight. Okay, great. Okay, you're fine. Fried fish. This research that we just talked about was correlation research, input, output, input, output. You see a correlation between the output, which is skin melanoma, and the input of consuming, in this case, tuna, non-fried fish, but you don't see a relation between when you fry the fish and an output, okay? But our approach at VA Shiva, everything we do is to educate you on a systems approach. I think about a month ago, I shared all with you a study that we had done that went beyond correlation, but took a systems approach to understand causation. And this was from correlation to causation. We shared with you work that we did in an NIH-funded project with the City of Hope, where they had found, again, this correlation between people who drank green tea was highly correlated with when they got a transplant. Let's say they got a lung transplant, heart transplant, whatever it was, they had a much greater chance of the transplant not being rejected. That means green tea consumption. So if you got a transplant, you had a higher chance that your transplant would not be rejected if you were drinking green tea. Again, you understand this is a correlation. We were interested in finding out why. In order to do that, you need to take a systems approach. A systems approach cannot be done by just doing input-output, which is what modern science really works at. Systems science allows us to do that. And in order to do that, we used, and by the way, we published our research, which I'll share with you very briefly. You can go see the green tea video, but I just want to share with you the difference. We published in the Clinical Nutrition Journal, one of the leading journals for clinical nutrition. But in order to do this, we used CytoSolve, which is a systems approach to understanding this. And as many of you know, the systems approach that we do, in fact, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to play you a video that will teach you what CytoSolve is, and I'll come right back because the video sort of shares with you all of it. Let me just play CytoSolve here. Who would have ever thought someone like me would invent email and create CytoSolve to revolutionize health for personalized and precision medicine, a system for delivering the right medicine for the right person at the right time? I was born a low-caste untouchable in India's caste system, a system of aristocracy, oppression, and racism. As a child, I observed my grandmother, a poor village farmer, practice Siddha, India's oldest system of medicine, to heal local villagers by observing their face, to know their unique constitution, to deliver a unique combination of foods, healing herbs, and massage. The caste system and her abilities to heal inspired me to understand the interconnectedness of all life. My name is Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai. I'm an MIT PhD, a Fulbright scholar, a scientist, technologist, and inventor. My family and I left India to come to America on my 7th birthday. As a 14-year-old, I began working as a full-time research fellow at Rutgers Medical School to unravel the mysteries of sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS, and created the world's first email system long before I ever heard of MIT. As I traversed academia over the next 3 decades, I observed self-serving academics, never solving real problems, writing grant after grant, competing for tenure, while diminishing real science and real scientists, pushing a reductionist science to destroy the scientific method. Like the blind men who never saw the whole elephant, but the parts, they delivered a dismembered view of reality. I observed Big Pharma use such reductionism, wasting billions year after year to fund research in test tubes, killing animals, and using the poor as guinea pigs for clinical testing to create products that even the FDA no longer allowed. Not only Big Pharma practiced this reductionism, but also the elites of Big Vitamin, Big Green, and Big New Age, with gurus and yogis, empowered by Hollywood celebrities, selling one supplement after another based on a cherry-picked science. All that changed in 2003 when the Human Genome Project ended, revealing that humans have the same number of genes, about 20,000, as that of a worm, giving rise to a systems biology. We realized that one-size-fits-all medicine was a failure. We realized their medicines were killing us, making today's generation's lifespan shorter than any previous generation. Obesity, heart disease, deaths from adverse reaction to drugs, confusion on what diet, what supplements, and who to believe is what they have delivered you. They push natural and organic products for your beauty and wellness, while their real solution is their plastic surgeons and Botox. We've been sold out. It's time for real science, a system science that interconnects the parts to discover truth, to know what really works, to get the health we need and deserve. This is why I created CytoSolve. CytoSolve is about truth, freedom, and health versus power, profit, and control. CytoSolve is a revolutionary technology integrating bioinformatics, computational biology, mathematical modeling, decentralization to reveal the truth. CytoSolve computes trillions of potential combinations of biomolecular interactions to discover what actually works based on the actual science. No reductionism, no cherry picking. CytoSolve's predictive modeling has been proven accurate time and time again, matching laboratory results. CytoSolve discovers synergistic combinations combinations of compounds to maximize health and reduce toxicity. For example, we know curcumin from turmeric and resveratrol from red grapes alleviate inflammation, but how much should we combine? Current methods are hand-waving at best. Here, with CytoSolve, we first modeled the control condition with no curcumin and no resveratrol to simulate high inflammation with the cytokine level at 0.15 micromolar. Next, we add just 5 micromolars of curcumin. The inflammation drops to 0.05. Next, we use 5 micromolars of resveratrol, and the inflammation drops from 0.15 to 0.06. But when we combine curcumin and resveratrol of 3 micromolars of curcumin and 2 micromolars of resveratrol, inflammation drops from 0.15 to 0.03, far lower, nearly 200% less than just one compound alone. That's the synergy principle of system science. We've all had enough of their fake and reductionist science. They think we'll simply keep buying their marketing, their celebrities, and their products that can never truly heal us. We don't need them. Great things come when we integrate the best of things. It's our time. It's time we delivered solutions for ourselves. It's time for truth, freedom, and health. It's time for CytoSolve. Welcome.